We're excited to have you here today. My name is Anthony Cervini. I'm partner and state and local government audit leader here at Sikich. I'm honored to welcome you to Sikich's 2024 Higher Education Forum. For today's event, we're excited to kick things off. We have two great sessions. Ray Bestie is going to lead off discussing generative AI and higher education. After Ray's session, we'll take a short break, and then we're going to reconvene for our second session of the day, in which Larry Johnson and John Lowe will cover charitable giving campaigns. Before we turn things over to Ray, we'll go through a few housekeeping items for you. For our CPE today, we're going to utilize the Conferences.io platform. So on your screen here, you'll see a link to the Conferences.io platform, as well as a QR code that you can access the platform on your mobile device. There is a resource guide that we'll have available for you here shortly as well in the materials. And we will provide you with the PowerPoint slides for today's session as well. Next slide, please, Ray. For those of you that are looking for CPE credit for attending today's forum, again, the Conferences.io platform. To receive that CPE credit, here's what you need to do. You need to check in and check out with your work email or email that you've registered with to receive your certificate for. For those of you that are attending from Sikich, we do have the connection to our system there. Throughout today's session, you'll receive code words. There'll be 3 codes in the first session and Ray's session, as well as 3 additional codes in John and Larry's session in the second half. On our next slide here, again, here's the link, the QR code again. Access information there. You'll see the event information once you log into Conferences.io. Next slide, please. So as you get logged in here, and we'll provide this information as well if you do need it or have a few issues with logging in here. But our first code of the day is 861. Again, 861 that you'll enter into the Conferences.io screen there. So leave this up for just 30 seconds here, or jot it down if you haven't logged in yet, so you can enter this throughout the session today. Right, on our next slide here, just want to take a brief moment and include some additional information on the wealth of services that Sikich provides. Certainly are not your typical professional services firm, and over the next 3 days here, we're excited to showcase the depth and the breadth of experience that our team brings to the table here. On our next slide, you'll see that the information presented here, we have over 40 years of providing services to clients as Sikich. We've come a long way in those 40 years. We now have 1,600 personnel with 130 partners across the world. And our focus is on providing world-class service to our clients across a variety of organizations and industries. With that, I'm excited to turn things over to Ray to cover generative AI and higher ed. Ray, take it away.
Thank you. So as you said, my name is Ray Bestie. I'm the principal AI strategist at Sikich. I've been involved with Sikich for going on 35 years now, focusing mainly on database and analytics and Microsoft Dynamics 365 throughout that career. And then in the last year or so, focusing in on all things AI and of course, generative AI in particular for our company as well as for our customers. Our agenda for today, we're going to begin by defining what exactly is AI and generative AI in particular, discuss current trends. We'll then discuss how generative AI can apply to educational institutions via applications, research assistants, and administrative efficiencies. We'll then go into the overarching goal of preparing students and ourselves for an AI future, some challenges and limitations of this tech, and future trends and developments. We'll then get a bit more tactical and discuss current technologies such as chatbots and co-pilots, and dabble some in the techniques of prompt engineering. We'll refocus back on concerns around Gen AI usage, such as responsible design ideas and potential ethical issues. We'll then go back to some useful ways to take advantage of Gen AI today, discuss how you determine your AI maturity level as you embark on your AI adoption, and discuss potential opportunities we'll run across in any AI deployment. We'll close with making it clear that Gen AI is just one form of AI, discuss some first steps you can take in your adoption, and next steps you should take, as well as a series of takeaways from today's discussion. We'll end with a few links to resources to help you keep up with this ever-changing technology. So why generative AI now? The three key advances that have made this possible right now in history are the availability of large amounts of data, i.e. the internet, the availability of scalable and reasonably priced powerful computer systems, thank you, NVIDIA, and breakthroughs in neural network architecture. As you can see by this slide and this chart, the concept of AI, especially ChatGPT, and the speed of adoption is unprecedented in the industry, comparing it to mobile phones and internet and even Facebook back just a few years ago. Indications are that generative AI is being embraced at a breakneck pace, outstripping the gradual adoption of earlier technology milestones like the internet. Therefore, institutions that hesitate to adopt may find themselves at a stark competitive disadvantage. So why Gen AI now in education? We have seen that advancements in these technologies make AI more accessible and effective for educational purposes. Personalized education is more feasible due to the ability to better analyze student performance data and the ability to learn student learning styles. Administratively, these advances enable the automation and streamlining of administrative tasks such as energy-saving systems and AI-powered chatbots. So where exactly is the guidance? It appears that most states are leaving the approach to take on AI up to the local school district. Even the 2 states that have some guidance at the state level are providing very broad general guidance that mimics overall understanding of generative AI in the business world. The reality is that the technology is so new that proven usage in the classroom and administratively is just not established yet, making for a difficult time for educators, students, and administrators to make decisions on what exactly to do, which is why you're here today. So let's look a little bit at the current trends in AI. So AI is being used more and more to automate mundane, repetitive tasks. This frees up administrators and faculty to focus on higher value work. I've got a mention there of AI agents, which is basically the ability of AI to feed other AI. And I would see that technology improving a lot in the next year or so, and something to look out for. AI tools can analyze massive amounts of data to uncover insights and patterns that would be impossible for humans to do manually. This can lead to data-driven decision-making. So that's your AI-powered analytics. Intelligent chatbots and virtual assistants powered by natural language processing can handle routine student and parent inquiries, freeing up human employees. They can also provide personalized recommendations. AI algorithms can continuously monitor for anomalies and suspicious transactions that could indicate fraud or compliance issues. This can augment auditing processes. With predictive modeling, advanced machine learning and techniques can help build models to forecast future needs, whether that's predicted enrollment, anticipated student churn, or other metrics that impact institutional operations. AI image recognition and computer vision techniques have applications ranging from processing documents to analyzing defects in visual inspections. This can automate traditionally manual visual tasks. And of course, you've got content creation through AI. With natural language generation, AI can generate well-written content tailored to specific needs, such as report generation, educational material catered to the end level of the user. And of course, its ability to create images. You have products like DALL-E, Midjourney, and Adobe to help in that area. So whenever you talk about any new technology, there's always going to be a bunch of acronyms. So here we're defining the primary acronyms that you will find related to AI, knowing there are literally dozens, if not more, of additional acronyms, such as LLM, which stands for Large Language Model, ML, which stands for Machine Learning, NLP, which stands for Natural Language Processing, and IoT, Internet of Things. The key takeaway from these definitions is that the current iteration of this tech is not your Terminator android coming to take over the world. That form of AI, which is called artificial general intelligence, is still theoretical. Whether that time is 8 years, which is actually the current estimate, 50 years, or ever is yet to be determined, and is going to be a lot on how you define that term. So looking through this list, you've got artificial intelligence that's been around for over 50 years, branch of computer science focused on creating intelligent machines that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence, visual, speech, and decision-making. AGI, which I mentioned a minute ago, is that hypothetical type of AI that would have the same cognitive ability as a human. Generative AI, which is what we're focusing on today, is that type, a subcategory of AI, type of in artificial intelligence that can generate new content, such as images, text, music, based on patterns. It can use that data to create new content, allowing institutions to generate new ideas, products, and services in a more efficient way. Now, you've, of course, heard of ChatGPT, and then you have all the other GPTs out there, and that three-letter acronym, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, is a type of machine learning model designed to generate text based on the input it receives. A term you may have heard less of, but is becoming very important in how we do all of this, is something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. It's a technique in natural language processing that boosts the capability of language models by fetching relative external information, the retrieval part, based on a query, then uses this information to generate a response, generation. This enhances accuracy, allows access to updated or specific data, aids in handling complex contexts, and enables secure use of private data. So if you think about the concept of a library, you walk into a library and you're looking for something very specific. If you had a librarian that could say, well, the topic you're searching for is in these 3 books, it focuses you in on those 3 books instead of having to learn the entire library. This concept allows for faster retrieval and smaller models since they don't need to train on every single piece of information to be effective. That's kind of the concept of RAG. The last item on the list here is RLHF, which stands for Reinforced Learning with Human Feedback. If you've used any of these chatbots, you may have noticed a thumbs up or thumbs down that's after the response. That concept is the idea of a machine learning technique where the algorithm learns through trial and error while receiving human feedback. So you're the human feedback, and it says the response is what I expected from the prompt, or it wasn't, and they use that to learn and tweak and adjust the models. So let's look at education applications of AI. Generative AI provides an opportunity to personalize education at a higher level. It provides the potential of scaling student engagement without increasing staffing costs through the utilization of AI tutors. Imagine building a system that can adapt immediately to student needs and differing ways of learning. More easily provides education for all, providing easier access through language and other accessible adjustments. And it streamlines academic processes by providing grading and feedback assistance, as well as curriculum development assistance. The bottom line being the potential increase in student retention and success rates, which are critical for an institution's financial health and reputation. Now, under research assistance, AI tools can aid in data analysis, literature review, hypothesis generation. It makes research more efficient and scalable, and can produce large data sets, identify patterns, and provide insights. It can help facilitate collaboration among students and educators, and through predictive analytics, it can analyze trends in enrollment, course popularity, graduation rates, student engagement, and performance. The bottom line is an ability to attract top faculty and students, further elevating an institution's standing. Under administrative efficiency, you have the ability for it to assist in the enrollment and admissions process, to assist in financial management and budgeting, facilities management, supporting of students, HR management, library services, and of course, data analysis and reporting efficiency. The bottom line is that administrative efficiencies can translate to substantial operational cost savings that can help free up funds for more strategic initiatives. And of course, we have preparing students for an AI-driven future. And we could say that that is maybe one of the primary missions of any institution. AI can be infused into the entire process by integrating it into the curricula, adding practical AI applications to coursework, how instructors do their job, and how admins do their job. You can add courses to teach ethics and responsible use of AI, form industry partnerships to provide practical real-world usage, drive home that learning in general is a lifelong learning process, but learning AI, of course, is even more that because it's changing so rapidly, provide career guidance and AI literacy to all students, and provide research opportunities. The bottom line here is that preparing students for an AI future will be a strategic investment in the institution's future competitiveness. So with all technical things like this, there are challenges and limitations. Currently, the accuracy of these models and the reliability is not 100%. That's why you will see in text things very much, but you may not see them in financial applications as much because, of course, that's got to be 100% accurate and reliable. Data dependency, the quality of the data that goes into them is the driver of what makes them good or bad. The implementation costs and maintenance, There's a cost to implementing these, and the overall maintenance can be a hindrance depending on budgets. Of course, there is a lot of information about bias, fairness, and privacy concerns. We'll go into that a little bit deeper, a little bit further. There's the training of faculty and student preparedness for this. There's always, of course, resistance to change and managing expectations. AI doesn't solve every problem. There's regulatory and policy challenges. For example, the EU's AI Act that recently has been discussed has listed education as a high-risk AI, so that makes it more difficult to deploy. One-size-fits-all assumptions and integration. The idea that you can get one chatbot or one piece of AI software and it's going to solve all your problems. Of course, that's not true. And then there's always the concern in any institution of over-reliance on technology and that loss of personal touch. The bottom line is that balancing the benefits and challenges is key to making strategic decisions about AI investments. So let's talk a little bit about future trends and developments. So the real-time adaptation of student learning parameters, improvements around continuously and immediately adjusting the factors that affect the student's learning experience as new data about their learning process is received. There are big advances in natural language processing that are happening in accuracy. You probably saw with ChatGPT 4 being kind of the leader, and now Google has their Gemini that has matched that, and their Ultra version they're saying might go ahead of that. So there's a constant battle in the industry right now to improve this, and it's going to continue to get more accurate. The non-textual side of this and the virtual and augmented reality tools that are out there allows you to have environments that mimic real-life scenarios. The automation of research to allow you to get more done quicker. The advancements in campus operation automation, the career services and guidance personalization, and the democratization of education through AI. The bottom line is that keeping on top of these trends ensures that your institution remains at the forefront of educational innovation. So let's pause here for 30 seconds so that you can get the next code word. Okay, we're going to move on now. So code word was 592. So this is a little busy slide, but there are literally thousands of AI products on the market with new ones coming every day. I'm going to focus on another aspect of generative AI software, and that is the AI being embedded into the software we use every day. It is important as you invest in AI software that you are wary of narrowly focused functionality that may be incorporated into larger suites. At OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT, their most recent conference, their announcement of new features and APIs for their ChatGPT has many AI startups scrambling to see if they are viable anymore. I predict that 10 years from now, there will not only be some of the current big names in tech, such as Microsoft and Google, but new players that no one knows today. One area of software to determine for Gen AI is which chatbot or chatbots you will support and endorse for deployment. There are several leaders today with OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Bard leading the way currently. There are costs to some and different levels of functionality, understanding which one does what. It's important for you not to only know which ones do what, but also have an acceptable usage policy set up so that you know how they're going to be used. So we look at AI chatbots. As I mentioned, we have ChatGPT. There's the free version, which is 3.5. You have the ChatGPT Plus, which is 4.0 or 4.5 for as far as the model being used, that costs money. You have the Microsoft Copilot, which used to be called formerly Bing or Bing Enterprise. Then you have Anthropic's Claude and Claude 2. You have Google with their Bard and Gemini. You may have seen in the press recently, Arizona State University and OpenAI announced a partnership to bring ChatGPT into their classrooms utilizing ChatGPT Enterprise. In their press release, they stated that it wants to focus on 3 key areas of concentration where it can use ChatGPT Enterprise, like enhancing student success, forging new avenues for innovative research, and streamlining organizational processes. You've also undoubtedly heard the term Copilot over and over and over again. or assistant in relation to generative AI. Copilots utilize that term we defined earlier called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to accomplish this. By using this technique, one of the hurdles of adoption of generative AI, which is security of your data, is assisted since data retrieved this way is not used to train LLMs. So Microsoft just released, literally 2 weeks ago, an update to their Copilot product for Microsoft 365 called Copilot Pro. This is a little cheaper. It's $20 per user, and it gives access to the ChatGPT model inside of your Office products. I mean, basically all the products except for Teams. You then also have your platform copilots, as I call them. So you have the Microsoft 365 Copilot, and you have the Google Duet AI, which is there for their product for the workplace users, and you have Amazon Q for the AWS users. The Microsoft 365 originally was only able to be licensed for 300 or more users. 2 weeks ago, when they announced Copilot Pro, they also reduced that count down to 1. So any person or any organization of any size can start off with a handful of users instead of having to upfront for 300 users. Besides the platform copilots, we also have these coding assistants. Microsoft's GitHub Copilot was one of the first and is very prevalent. There's a lot of other ones like that. You also have the Power Apps and Power Automate products from Microsoft, which are for low code programming. And you have Microsoft Copilot Studio, which allows companies like Sikich and others to go in and customize the copilots that are out there, as well as create your own GPT or Copilot for very focused functionality. And then Microsoft also has a security Copilot, and literally there's another dozen of them for every product basically out there is going to have a Copilot, including Zoom that we're using right here. They call theirs AI Companion, as I can see it in the title bar there. So here are just a few examples of how many of the many ways you can use Microsoft Copilot to save time and energy. So this recently, Microsoft just published this about using Copilot in an educational environment. So they're claiming that you can use it to help personalize learning. It can support personalized learning by helping you create content, tailor feedback, and guidance for students based on their individual needs and learning style. We kind of talked about that a few slides ago. For brainstorming, you can use Copilot to brainstorm new ideas for activities, lesson plans, supporting materials, and assignments. For lesson planning, Copilot can help you plan lessons by suggesting or drafting activities, resources, and assessments that align with learning objectives. You can also use Copilot to start a rubric for the lesson. And providing feedback. Copilot can help you draft initial feedback and ideas for students on their work, which you can edit and personalize for your students. And getting quick answers. Copilot can help you get quick answers to your questions without having to read through multiple search results. Also, Copilot provides links to content resources so you can assess the source of dive deeper into the original content. The bottom line is the ongoing need to evaluate what is available and what is coming and balance the cost benefit based on needed functionality and budgets, all the while knowing that your decision today will likely change more rapidly than past software decisions. It used to be you kind of went through an RFP process, you figured out what you want, you bought it, and you were good for 10 years. Now, because this is changing literally weekly, if not daily, the choices you make today could easily be thrown out tomorrow because something new and better is going to come out there, since we're in that very early stage of generative AI. So I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and talk about one of the concepts behind using generative AI effectively, and that's prompt engineering. It's one of those new skills that enables you to take full advantage of this technology. I've spoken to many people that have tried, quote unquote, one of these chatbots, fed it a Google-like prompt, and gotten an unimpressive result, so they gave up. Prompt engineering is a skill, and there is an art to it. Structuring your prompt clearly and precisely will produce clear and precise results. Communication skills are the key. This is why when I talk to different industries, education in particular has a leg up because it's made of teachers, which typically are good communicators. That communication skill is what really drives good prompt engineering. Prompt engineering should be a skill weaved into curricula. There are some that argue that this skill is a short-term need, as companies will make prompting details less required as time goes on. But for today, this skill is needed to get the most out of the current iteration of tools. One way of looking at how you create good prompts is through the concept of prompt, prime, persona. A good prompt will typically involve setting the stage so that the AI understands your intent and desired output. This can be accomplished by using a persona or character, priming with context, and then providing the specifics of your question and desired output. So a persona is like a fictional profile representing different user types. It's used in AI and machine learning to guide design, development, and evaluation by aligning with the needs and preferences of the intended audience. So for example, you could say, you are a seasoned CFO at a large university, as the persona you're trying to get the AI engine, the model, to focus in on. You can then use priming, and it is a technique of providing additional context or information to a model before the main prompt to guide its response in a specific direction or ensure understanding of certain constraints. So for example, with your innovative approaches to managing cash flow in a higher education institution, and then continue, or from your perspective as a leader in streamlining administrative costs for higher education, and then continuing. So you're priming the engines, setting up where they should start focusing their attention. And then, of course, you have the actual thing you're trying to get it to do, the prompt. A prompt is a specific input given to a model, such as a question or a command, to give it its response in generation of particular output. So for example, to give better direction, you can optionally provide it the desired tone or example of writing. So for example, you could say, write using a professional tone, or use a friendly tone in response. You can also help it with formatting to adjust your request to add or omit pieces and provide formatting direction. So for example, you might say, write your response in 500 or fewer words, or output your results as a table with the following columns, A, B, and C, and write in plain English without acronyms or jargon. And then you have extras, additional refinements to guide how the AI responds, such as asking it to explain its thinking. There are many different theories about how best to prompt these tools. A few of them, frameworks, include single large prompt. So some people believe you should write basically a dissertation, tell exactly what you want in one large prompt. Others believe you should use prompt chaining, guide the model step by step with a series of shorter prompts using the context of the previous response for the next prompt. And then most use some type of hybrid where you prime initially the prompt what you want, and then you follow up with chain prompts for clarification. One thing to keep in mind with all of these techniques is that these models are not unlimited. They have something called token limits that determine how large of an input and how large of an output they can take. Some limits are as little as 4,000 or 8,000 characters or tokens. And you can think of a token as kind of like a syllable. It's not really exactly the same as that, but you can think of a word with 3 syllables probably is about 3 tokens. And you have things like Claude, which can handle 200,000 tokens, ChatGPT 4 Turbo, 128,000 tokens, and then others that either aren't documented or 32,000 or 8,000, etc. So that drives what happens, because if the prompt is too large, or if you chain too many prompts together and you get beyond that limit, the beginning of your prompt gets forgotten and it starts to forget and it starts to have hallucinations and other problems. That's why one of the key things when you're using any of these tools is you always want to start over when you're onto a new concept. Don't keep going, because it will use the prior things you had above as context of what you're trying to accomplish, which may have nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish. So just a couple examples. You can have a whole course just on prompt engineering because it is, like you said, an art, and it's something that once you learn it, you'll get better results. So here's one, learning any complex topic in just a few minutes. So you can say something like, explain that topic. Here I use the example of passive activity loss in simple and easy terms that any beginner can understand. So I'd like to tell a little story about this particular type of prompt. One of the realities of this technology and anything new is that there are many different points of view about whether it does more harm than good, or is the best thing that has ever happened, and everything in between. Like most information gained in our lives, the source of that information can heavily determine your current point of view. Case in point is my 85-year-old mother. All she knew about AI is what her principal AI strategist son, me, could mention to her in passing and what she heard in the news. That perspective had her negative about AI, since most of the current news, such as things on 60 Minutes, has been slanted towards all that could possibly happen negatively with this tech and very little about what it can do for the good. So while visiting her recently and going through the typical list for Ray to help her with, I was helping her regain access to her online medical app. She has many doctor appointments, and the summaries of those are available in her app, which she likes to get since the information is posted much faster than her doctors tend to get back to her about. The issue is that those summaries tend to be in doctor talk and not easily understood by the rest of us. So we went to one of her summaries. I took a picture of the text and then asked ChatGPT to explain the text in terms that were simple to understand. It came back with something like this. Imagine you have a house with 4 rooms. 2 of the rooms are normal in size and 2 of the rooms are larger than normal. One of the rooms is a door that is only supposed to allow things to enter, but sometimes it allows things to go the other direction as well. Your house also has one room with a door that has a chalky residue on it that it shouldn't. So what did this mean? This means mother has a heart with 2 enlarged chambers and a faulty valve with regurgitation and another valve with some calcium buildup. That she understood and immediately changed her overall attitude on what AI can be. This subsequently triggered a call from my brother a few days later that never wants to do anything related to technology, and he suddenly wants me to train him on how to use this stuff. Since he works for a tech magazine, of all things, but he doesn't know anything about tech. Apparently, my mom has relayed this story to him. The bottom line is we will discover some today is that there are positive and negative issues with any technology, but ignoring it entirely due to any one side of this without knowing both sides isn't a good idea. So to finish off the other samples on this page, to get ChatGPT to write in your style, analyze the writing style from the text below. So give it an example of your writing, the tone and the way you write, and then write a 200-word piece on some other topic. Semantic indexes in my example here. You can get it to respond to emails. You're a customer service rep dealing with a customer upset about a late delivery. Write a 100-word apology email. Train ChatGPT to generate prompts for you. You're an AI designed to help CFOs. Generate a list of the top 10 best prompts for yourself. The prompt should be about annual budget planning. Ask ChatGPT to help you become better at using ChatGPT. Create a beginner's guide to using ChatGPT. Topics should include prompts, priming, and personas. Include examples where necessary. The guide should be no longer than 500 words. And eliminate writer's block. I'm running a blog about something, current trends and data analytics. I can't come up with a catchy title. Give me a list of 5 suggestions for the blog title for this piece. And then you'll do that and say, give me 10 more suggestions. Give me 5 more suggestions. Can you make them funnier? Can you make them more interesting? Can you make them more technical? You can keep adding to that until you get the answer that you're expecting. And that's a key part of prompt engineering. Don't expect one prompt, one answer. It's usually one prompt, get an answer, and then adjust until you get to what you really want. The bottom line about prompting is that you need to learn how to communicate with the large language model in a way that mirrors the intent of the content you wish it to build. Prompting as you might do a Google or Bing search will not bring back a concise and accurate response. There are many publicly available cheat sheets on prompting to get you started, and I would recommend creating a location, such as a Microsoft Teams or SharePoint or similar site, to store commonly used and effective prompts so that you and your colleagues can learn from each other. But keep in mind that simply copying and pasting from a list of prompts is not the best way to utilize this tool. Honing your communication skills will provide the best results. So let's dive a little deeper into potential issues of these chatbot tools. You may have heard the term hallucinations in reference to generative AI. I prefer the term confabulation since hallucinations implies intent in thinking. GPT models use something called vector indexes to determine the next word in a sequence, and when a logical next word is not available, it will fill in a mathematically correct next word that may have nothing to do with what you're trying to get it to do. This is what people think is a hallucination, but in fact is a lack of useful data in that context. Beyond technical vector index issues, since the source of these tools, such as ChatGPT, is primarily the internet, and the internet is chock full of inaccuracies and just plain wrong information, these tools may confidently respond with incorrect answers or even complete nonsense. Responses should always be fact-checked before making any decisions or publishing a response. Beyond that, the items listed here are all potential downsides. So lack of control. Generative AI tools can sometimes produce unpredictable and uncontrollable outputs, which can lead to unintended consequences. Like any system, AI system, generative AI tools may be influenced by the data used to train them, leading to potential biases in their outputs. The use of AI for generating content can raise ethical issues, particularly around issues like plagiarism, authorship, and ownership, which is obviously of particular interest to this industry. The accuracy of generative AI tools can be variable depending on the quality of the training data and the complexity of the task. While generative AI tools can produce large volumes of text, the quality of that text may not always be high enough for certain purposes. Since these tools mimic human behavior, they can also make mistakes that are similar to those made by humans, including errors in logic and reasoning. The use of Gen AI tools for generating sensitive or confidential information can pose security risks, particularly in generated content, if the generated content falls into the wrong hands. Some tools can be expensive to develop and maintain, particularly those that require large amounts of computing power, so the cost is an issue. The use of generative AI tools can be complex and requires specialized expertise, which may be difficult for some organizations to obtain. And while Gen AI tools can be useful for certain tasks, they may not be applicable or effective for all types of content generation. So that brings us to the concept of responsible AI system design and development, which companies such as Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google keep emphasizing as their approach. Collect data that is representative and diverse. Ensure that the data is collected ethically and with the informed consent of the individuals providing it. Be transparent about how the data will be used and who will have access to it. That one, even though they claim, that is one that the non-open source models are not doing a great job at, and that needs to be improved, I believe. Choose a model that is appropriate for the task at hand. Consider the trade-offs between accuracy and fairness, and ensure that the model is not biased against any particular group of people. That's a very important one. Be transparent about how the AI system works. Document the algorithm used and make it available to others for review. Explain the reasoning behind the decisions made by the system. What we don't want is the CEO of these companies going out and saying, how did that happen? I'm not really sure. That's not really giving us a lot of confidence. Ensure that the AI system can be easily interpreted and understood by humans. This will help us to build trust in the system and ensure it is used responsibly. Continuously evaluate the performance of the AI system and make improvements as needed. Monitor for bias and errors and adjust the system accordingly. Consider the ethical implications of the AI system and its impact on society. Ensure that the system is designed and developed with ethical considerations and that it is not used to perpetuate harm or discrimination. And human oversight is a key one. Ensure that there is appropriate human oversight of the system. A human should be involved in the development, deployment, and monitoring the system to ensure that it is used responsibly and ethically. Let's dive into ethics a little bit. AI has the ability to collect and analyze vast amounts of personal data, which can raise concerns about privacy. As AI systems become more advanced and sophisticated, they may be able to collect and analyze increasingly sensitive information about individuals, including their location, behaviors, and personal preferences. This raises important questions about who owns this data, who has access to it, and how it is being used. AI systems are only as objective as the data they are trained on. If the data used to train an AI system is biased or discriminatory, then the system may perpetuate these biases in its outputs. This can lead to unfair or unjust outcomes, particularly in areas such as hiring, student admissions, lending, and criminal justice. One of the potential impacts of AI is the displacement of human workers through automation. While AI has the potential to create a lot of new jobs, it may also lead to significant job losses in certain industries, particularly those that rely heavily on routine and repetitive tasks. You probably have heard the phrase, AI won't replace you, but a person using AI might. It was a common phrase initially, but now there is an increased concern that companies learning how to utilize AI to streamline operations, and they will use this newfound efficiency just to cut jobs. The key here is providing opportunity for employees to upskill and learn new skills to remain relevant. Oops, sorry about that. AI systems can be complex and opaque, which can make it difficult to understand how they're making decisions and who is responsible. This raises important questions about accountability and transparency, particularly in areas such as healthcare, finance, and law enforcement, and safety. As AI systems become more autonomous and capable of making decisions on their own, there is a risk that they may cause harm to humans or the environment. This raises important questions about how to ensure the safety and reliability of AI systems, particularly in areas such as autonomous vehicles and robotics. So how can we use this stuff today? One area would be with AI tutors and virtual assistants trained on university knowledge and best practices. You can create an answer bot or FAQ engine for students and parents and faculty for technical support, train it with common questions and issues so it can provide instant responses, whether by manual prompting or by setting up a chatbot. Using it for data analysis. The ability of Gen AI to perform analysis on your data is amazing. There are concerns that public chatbots may use your data for training, so it's important to understand the stated use statements of products and to not divulge private information to these tools. This is where products like Bing Enterprise, ChatGPT Enterprise, and Microsoft's 365 Copilot and the security provided becomes important. Generate marketing materials such as blogs, social media posts, and website content, conducting research and information gathering, and then using tools such as Microsoft's Power Apps and Power Automate and GitHub, Copilot, and Copilot Studio to help explain, improve, write, debug, comment, and translate code, help write test cases, generate test data, and generate documentation and training materials. So when you embark on your journey to deploy AI of any form, one of the first tasks is to understand your maturity of your AI understanding. So are you at a foundational level, which means you're questioning what AI is and how it can be applied? Your firm or your university has low digitization, basic analytical capabilities. Or are you approaching? You're hopeful on AI and what it has to offer. You've become fairly digitized. You're looking to increase optimized processes and you're cautious about disruption. Maybe you're aspirational. You've experimented and applied some AI. You're highly digitized. You want new business models and have achieved a culture around data. Or are you mature? Your data science emerging with operational capability. You understands model lifecycle management and on your way to building a foundational data architecture. So when you're deploying, there are, I phrase it here as opportunities or challenges to work on those particular projects. So you have the potential for oversimplified view of your objective. And unrealistic expectations can be an issue. Important to clearly identify your objective and in enough detail to be successful. You have to determine, is the ROI there? And that's an important part of this. There are lots of different things that AI can do, but the cost to get there just might not make sense for what you're trying to accomplish. Algorithm, hallucination, or confabulation. As mentioned earlier, if incomplete or invalid data is a source for your algorithm, the results will not be models are trained up to a certain point. And then after that, you can't just keep training them over and over. The cost is too high as the last time it was trained. That is where utilizing techniques such as RAG, retrieval augmented generation, can assist. Restrictiveness. Not all problems can be solved with AI. Currently, AI is not as good as math as you would think, for example. Interpretability. Results are not always clear and may require multiple prompts. Token constraints we talked about earlier. There are current limitations. GPT-3 has an 8,000 token, for example. 4 has 128,000 and Claude has 200,000. Ability to keep state. They don't remember you or anything you've done since the last time you hit reset. That is something that's going to change soon. I know that ChatGPT is working on an update for that so that it learns who you are and what you've asked in the past and uses that for future. But currently, that's an issue. Data quality and availability, garbage in, garbage out, and of course, ethical concerns, bias, prejudice, and copyrights. So let's take another pause here for code word 647, and we'll give it a few seconds for you to get that. Okay, hopefully everybody got that, 647, and we'll move into the home stretch. So when we discuss AI solutions, it's important to recognize that AI is a broad field encompassing a diverse array of technologies tailored to different needs and use cases. As exciting and interesting as generative AI is currently, other forms of AI that have been available for much longer should also be considered with a focus on how these technologies can work together. So machine learning or predictive analytics is the use of algorithms to learn from data and improve without explicit programming. Business intelligence, which are systems that collect, analyze, and present business information, and IoT be analyzed to trigger actions based on that analysis. These all produce and represent data, and generative AI needs data, so you can use generative AI to talk to the data that these types of AI produce, and that way you can work with them together. So what do you do to get started? The first thing is you want to develop a strategy. Develop a strategy that aligns with your institutional mission and vision and get your data in order. Second thing is identify, recognize areas where AI can add the most value. The third one you're doing today, invest in education and upskilling. Take an incremental approach. Don't try to do it all at once. Compliance and security, make sure to follow all regulations to secure your data. Establish an acceptable use policy. And human-centric, make sure humans are always in the loop. Now, if you're interested in one of the co-pilot concepts, whether it's Microsoft, Google, Amazon, or one of the others that are out there, make sure that the software you're interested in interacting with AI is in the cloud, or it just isn't going to work very well. Make sure your prerequisite licensing is in order, as some of these AI products require a certain base license in order to work. Get to work on standardizing your data. Remove duplicates, remove outdated material, properly tag it, etc. And then identify your security needs and be sure that your data is properly sectioned into security profiles today that AI can utilize. One of the powers of the co-pilots is the ability to surface data in your system, find things that were difficult to find in the past. That can be a great thing to find things you were really looking for, but it can be a bad thing if it finds things you're not supposed to see because security wasn't set up properly.
Hey, Ray, real quick, we've got an icon or a pop-up on the slide deck.
Oh, sorry. Always the joys of technology. So we've talked a lot about bad data today. Structured data housed in a database with column names is the type of data that has been a problem for those systems in AI for a long time. Unstructured data that is not tagged and consistent is where generative AI and other AI systems really have an issue. So when we talk about structured data, we look at missing values, such as a research database with missing ages. We have outliers, financial transactions where the average may be $1,000 and there's one in there for $1 million. You have inconsistencies, a CRM system where the same student is listed under different IDs. You have the potential of a lack of master data, not knowing which piece of data is the master record or which system that houses your data is the system of record. You have this raw, incorrect data. The tuition database records $500, but it was supposed to record $5,000. Or you have duplicate data. You have a course directory where the same course is listed multiple times. Those are things we've been fighting for years in all kinds of systems. Unstructured data, though, is where generative AI really needs a lot of its data source. So you have things like noise, unnecessary data. You scrape data off the web that includes ads. You have ambiguity. You have data with multiple interpretations, such as customer reviews that have sarcasm. You have low resolution for images. You have facial recognition model trained on blurry pictures, won't do very well with high resolution images. You have incomplete data. Extracted tweets that are cut off skew sentiment analysis. And irrelevant, info that doesn't contribute to the goal. So you're training a model about sentiment analysis and using technical manuals as the training data. So those are just some examples of what we mean by bad data. So I mentioned acceptable use policy earlier. This is kind of just an overall look at what a acceptable use policy might look like. It governs the expectations around how AI should be used and not used with your institution. And it should be a living document that is updated on a regular, probably quarterly basis as technology and laws evolve. So under proper usage, make sure you proof your work, you edit your work, you fact check everything before you ever send it out. It's taught as a starting point, not a copy and paste finished product. Be transparent when you use AI. Make sure you understand the terms of service and you understand data privacy and the security we mentioned earlier. Make sure you identify prohibitive use. Don't allow them, never reenact someone without consent. Never allow the creation, obviously, of illegal content. Never use to harass, bully, or intimidate or discriminate. Never share confidential or sensitive material. Never compromise the security or integrity of your company. And of course, never violate any applicable laws. So there's all kinds of acceptable use policies, templates out there that you can start off with and tweak towards your institution. The idea is if you don't tell people what the expectation is, then somebody's just gonna, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. And at least you have a guideline to start off with. So here we're at the end here, and this is what we've hopefully given you a good overview and definition of what generative AI is and isn't, and how it fits into the larger world of AI in general. What we've done today is we've defined the term and related terms in AI, where they came from and current trends. We discussed the impact of generative AI in an educational environment. We dipped our toes into the prompt engineering pool and discussed potential issues with the technology. We listed various ways to utilize AI today, discussed how to assess your maturity and potential deployment pitfalls, discussed that AI is much more than generative AI, provide a list of next first steps in your AI journey, and highlighted the definition of bad data. And of course, we discussed the need and an outline for an acceptable use policy around AI. As far as key takeaways, the first one, data, data, data. Start with your data. Assess its condition and plan to make it better. Start small. Don't try to solve all problems at once. Get different groups involved from faculty, students, and administration to define low-hanging fruit that can provide a win and build confidence. Establish an acceptable use policy emphasizing transparency. Enable your users to experiment. Be transparent in usage and get everyone involved. Provide a way for users to collaborate and include them in the process, and embrace your role in preparing students for an AI-driven world and include them in this AI transformation. So that concludes our session here, and I guess open it up, Anthony, for any questions.
Yeah, so folks, feel free to, if you have any questions for Ray, to go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we'll, if we're able to address those, we certainly will. But Ray, while we're giving folks a few moments to do that, just a couple questions in terms of, let's start with prompt engineering. You talked about the importance of prompt engineering and how effective prompt engineering, can make a pretty big difference in, what you're getting out of the AI. Is there, one skill or trick that folks can use to kind of improve that?
Well, I think the key to prompt engineering, of course, as I stated in the session, was communication. If you're good at communicating your ideas, like a good teacher would be, then you will have a large advantage with prompt engineering. So I think it's just being yourself, and the key with it is don't prompt it like you would try to do a search with Google or one of the other search engines. Understand if I'm trying to communicate or explain something to you, I explain it to the level of your understanding. I explain where you're at, and then I keep explaining until the bell goes off. Kind of the same thing, like when you're teaching, and I've done a lot of training, and you explain something one way, and you get glares, and you explain it another way, and then you start seeing the bells go off, and then you explain it a different way, and suddenly it understands. The language model is the same way. The more you can add detail, the better result, and it understands. And it's very apologetic when it gets it wrong and you say, I think you're wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. Here, let me try this. And it gives you another answer. So it's very little disconcerting sometimes because it almost feels like it's a human there, but there is no human. It's just trying to understand, and it's trying to funnel through everything that's there and come to an understanding. And the more you can communicate it well, the better you're going to get a good result.
No, I think that I've seen that just in the little bit of dabbling that I've done with Chat GPT there too, just in terms of asking it for something and then kind of pushing back a little bit to say, or telling it no, make it make it a little bit, gentler, if you will, in terms of the messaging on that. And it,
Well, it's actually funny. They said if you compliment it, please and thank you. And some people claim that if you offer to bribe it with a tip, hey, if you do this well, I'll give you $100. Obviously, you're not going to do that, but it gives a better result, which is kind of odd, but apparently it works.
it's like dealing with children, it sounds like.
That's right. If you do that, I'll give you a cookie.
Right, exactly. Um, one of the things here, if you're just getting started on this, you kind of close with a little bit of this as well. But if you're just kind of getting started at a university or institution of higher education here, what's kind of the best area, or where would you recommend kind of dipping your toes in the water?
Well, I think it's being upfront and open with everybody involved. So having a discussion with administrators, professors, and understanding where they're at. You're going to have, just like in any business and society, you have people who haven't touched it, they're against it, and people have been in there since November of last year, 2 years ago, and everywhere in between. So you need to gauge their knowledge level, their acceptance of it, and their willingness to experiment. And then, of course, you got to have that acceptable use policy before people get too deep. And I think that's an important part of it. And then you start experimenting and documenting what that is. And then before you know it, you'll be creating your first GPT.
Excellent. Last one here, just uh, on my end here. And again, folks, if you do have any questions for Ray, go ahead and get those in the chat here before we wrap up this first session. But um, you know, organizations have just tons of data there. Where should they get started?
Well, I think the first part is realizing that when we say data, we're not meaning just your structured data that's in your finance and HR system, but more importantly, it's your unstructured data sitting in your emails and your Word documents and your PowerPoint and your PDFs. Take the time to catalog that data, determine what would be useful for AI to know. So you have all this data that may, if you're an organization or a university that's been around for 200 years, think of the data that's collected. How much of that data do you want the AI to know about? There's probably a lot of obsolete data that is no longer interesting, and you don't want it to return and clog up the system with information that's not valid. So identifying what's obsolete and what does not fit any use case of what you would ever want, so you can call that out, will be an important part to determining what does get trained so that you only get good answers. So it's documenting what you have and understanding what you have so that you can tag it properly and get rid of the stuff that you no longer need.
Excellent. In terms of, if an organization is interested in going down this path and finding out, learning more about AI, how do they go about that? What options do they have for, if they're looking for someone from a consulting standpoint, or being able to kind of say, hey, this is all overwhelming to me as I look at this. I don't even know where to get started on that. Any tips on what someone in that position should do?
Well, obviously that was a lead in right to Sikich here. So call it duck what it is. I mean, the reality is that uh, everybody is kind of in the same boat. You're not behind. There are a few leaders out there maybe that have done things and they have a huge endowment fund and they've spent millions of dollars and partnered, et cetera. Then there's the rest of us. And so, partnering with a company like Sikich or somebody who understands this technology and just doing that assessment, it can be as short as a few days. It can be a lot farther depending on, what your goal is. And one of the battles of this technology that Microsoft and all the rest are struggling with defining, I think, very well, and everybody who's into this is trying to kind of determine where's the beef? Where do I actually solve a problem? What is the use case? So defining that use case. So an example is, I've given this to our own consultants, is okay, you're an expert in BC or F&O or some other ERP package. You know what the problems are that you hear every day from your customers. What are those problems? And so that you think AI can solve. And so I'll get a list of 20 different things. And out of that list, maybe 3 are actually AI problems. And the rest are just the same problems we've all had. An interesting part about this is that since AI has taken over the media and taken over technology conferences, It's as if all those other problems went away. We don't have AP problems. We don't have problems getting the checks out. All those things magically went away because everything's about AI. Those problems are still there. And so identifying those and then which problems can actually be solved by AI. And there's other forms of AI, predictive analytics and all the other things I mentioned. It's not just about generative AI. It's getting them to work better. We all ultimately want to get to the point, I'm a CFO, I'm sitting in front of my accounting system. I don't want to have to figure out what button to push and which report to run. I just want to ask a human language question and get a useful answer. That's where we're going. We're not quite there yet out of all these systems, but the ability to customize these co-pilots to get there. And I would think in a few years, we will get to that point. You'll just ask a question and it will go and it will write code in the background to do that. That's a lot of what it does today with ChatGPT and their analysis engine, with Microsoft Excel and its ability to use Python to write code about what you want on the fly to give you an answer. That power is coming to our fingertips here, and we'll make that reasonable in the near future.
No, and I think it's fascinating to think about the possibilities that are there. While I think everyone probably to some extent a little bit guarded in terms of, okay, well, what does this look like? How does what's the some of the things that you pointed out too in terms of what are the ethical considerations on this? What is the the oversight piece on this as well? One of the things that I saw too that I thought was interesting is an article in terms of how some institutions have used this to address questions that are coming in from students or prospective students when it comes to something like financial aid, for example. Filling out the FAFSA form on that and being able to address those as well. So I think the possibilities are endless on that. So excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, and that's you think about those type of documents, government documents, and how complicated and long-winded they many times are, and you try to read them, and the way you interpret them is different depending how many times you read them. To be able to feed that knowledge and have the AI engine give you a synopsis that's intelligible, and you can tell it in different levels depending on where your experience is, that is a game changer in just everyday life of how you go about doing things. So to me, in the education field especially, you think about shortage of teachers and all of that, and the different ways that people like to learn and different levels. You're in a class of 50 people and you have different people at different levels. The teacher teaches to the middle, so the people at the top are bored, the people at the bottom are lost. So having something that, think about what we're doing right here in a meeting, to be able to go in and somebody throws an acronym out. I don't know what that is. I'm too embarrassed to ask, but while we're talking, I could say, well, what does AI mean? What does this mean? And it tells me, and now I've that fear has gone away, and now I can continue on and understand and learn. So it's changing the way we do things. Obviously, people are going to try to cheat the system. I have a report to do, a paper due tomorrow. I'm just going to ask it, and is it going to paste it in? You're not learning anything. So changing the way, making you show your work that you're doing at different levels. There's all kinds of stuff out there. There's at the end here, and I'll just slide to the next slide here. So I have this kind of list of, what do I do to learn? We talked about talking to a consulting company, but this is how I learn every day. There's these newsletters that are out there. There's podcasts that go out there. There's a 2023 review of AI in education that I thought was a pretty good article that described a lot of the things I learned about how this might work in this industry. So there's all kinds of people talking about this and people looking at every day, because we all have day jobs doing other things. We can't be doing this every day, but you hit one of these once a week and at least keeps you up on the new jargon and things that are going on so you don't fall behind.
Excellent. Well, Ray, thank you so much for your time this morning and for going through this with our group. Certainly an ever evolving landscape that we're looking at here, and great to have the information here in terms of being able to kind of keep up on this as well and keep on the forefront. So again, thank you for that as well. We're going to go ahead and get started with our second session of the day. So I'll turn it over to John. Take it away.
Thank you, Anthony. All right. We begin with a code word, and the code word is 296. So please enter that or write it down. 296. All right, I'll commence. All right, so the purpose today for Larry and for me is to talk about charitable giving techniques. Admittedly, I'm going to handle the more dry, perhaps technical aspects of charitable giving, certain trust pictures of me from long ago and Larry. The agenda. We're going to talk about several of the techniques shown here, and Larry's going to end with the softer side of charitable giving. Background, real quick. I was an estate planning attorney for a good long while before joining Sikich. I've been in public accounting now at large accounting firms for nearly 10 years. My role at Sikich is a tax director in the estate and gift tax team. I assist our clients with wealth transfer, either really well thought out, proactively planned, or reactively. I assist estates when folks have passed, file necessary tax returns, estate tax returns. And one of the components of what I do is work with a lot of people of high wealth, and charity is certainly a component of it. So I need to be versed in these areas and work real closely with advisors and clients to make sure that their objectives are met. Larry, why don't I turn it over to you real quick just to tell a little bit about yourself?
Morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm a CPA. I've been in practice since the 1980s. I am pretty much a technical person, I would say, like John, maybe not as technical as John, but I'm a person who talks about code sections and reads court cases every morning and tax court cases. And I'm very active in, helping higher wealth clients do what they want to do. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that have influenced my life later. But my experience, what makes my experience different is I spent some time in like family wealth counselor groups and some groups that weren't made up just of practicing accountants. They were more made up of people who helped clients to do what they wanted to do, whether it's to, make a change in their life, leave a legacy, do something really cool. So I've been lucky to have both sides of the practice. And one of the things that over the years, at times, we have worked with like universities and fundraising professionals. I helped start a community foundation. I was one of the founding members of our community foundation, actually helped start another one. But we have some ability to be of service to a fundraising professional who might say, I'm dealing with a really complicated client and want to talk about some of the things they might consider doing because at a university or college, or you have all kinds of opportunities. So we can be of service sometimes in that regard, helping people ask the right questions, talk to the right things about to their client.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. All right, so I'll dive right into the techniques, and I'll begin with donor advised funds. Oh, sorry, Larry, I spoke over you.
So take it away, John. But if in fact, John, I might jump in at John's request in this section just to talk about my perspective on some of these things, which is the same and also different. So, which is good.
Yeah. In fact, Larry, why don't you just commence with a little bit of the thing that I would say is that donor advised funds have grown certainly in popularity, and it's largely driven from two things. One, a charitable intent of a growing wealthy population, and two, tax provisions under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in which itemized deductions were raised so high that nearly, I don't know what the percentage is, it's some 90%, 85% of America now uses the standard deduction rather than itemized because of certain limits that were put in. So a lot of people who used to get to be itemizing as a result of charitable gifts are no longer doing so. The theory behind a donor advised fund is to take several years. Say you have a client who's giving $8,000 to $10,000 a year to charity. That alone isn't likely to get you enough of a deduction to cause the client to itemize. But if you instead took 2 to 3 years of their charitable giving and contributed them all in 1 year to a donor advised fund, that charitable deduction would happen in that year in its entirety, and you would move to an itemized deduction. And then in subsequent years, you would go back to the standard deduction. So certainly the tax provisions have caused a growth in it. Larry, you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I was pushing to start a community foundation back in 2001-ish was because we have donors that, this is long before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. What well, we have occasionally have a client selling their big business and they know they want to make a charitable gift, but they don't want to do it right away, but they want to get a deduction right away. So they go to the community foundation, bigger fan of the community foundation than like Schwab and Fidelity, because Schwab and Fidelity really don't care about, your community. But they're a great destination also. So they let's say they want to put a 10,000 or 100,000 or a million or 10 million away, and they say, we talked to them about a private foundation, and we tell them all this is involved, all the costs, and they say, now can I? And I said, just use a community foundation at your local community, the community foundation in your local community in your area, and set up what could be, John, the equivalent of a private foundation. And private foundations are nice for accounting firms in that we get annual filings, and they're nice for law firms because they create fees and everything, but they're not for everybody. We've got a number. I was just on the phone this morning with a client over in another accounting firm in Indy talking about private foundations and or donor advised funds. So donor advised fund for your donor, for your potential donor, for your alumni, for your local community member who wants to help your school, their wealth might be in a donor advised fund at a community foundation, and you'll never know how much is in there. It's not public, but it's there, and you may see other gifts in the community, and if you do, coming from their donor advised fund, that donor advised fund is where their money's coming from. You won't know how much they have, but you'll know if they're charitable. So donor advised funds are a tremendous tool for charitable people who maybe want to put, whether it's 10,000 or 10 million if we were in the out in California in the tech area out there are community foundations with billion-dollar donor advised funds. Super wealthy members of the tech world said, I don't want a private foundation anymore. I'm just going to put a local community foundation and give the money away. And it's as simple as calling the community foundation, saying, hey, I'd like to give money to XYZ college, university, whatever. They approve it amongst their board, which they will, and they send you a check. So donor advised funds have become a great tool for some, smaller donors in the last few years, but big donors have big money at community foundations in donor advised funds too. So that's my short but long-winded approach to donor advised funds.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing is, and you've hit on it, is that these are far less restrictive, less onerous than a private foundation. Frankly, the steps are quite simple, especially if you go to something and it is impersonal. But the Schwab and the Fidelity, their platforms are so easily used online. You just choose a sponsor, you contribute to it, and then you begin making recommendations as to the gifts. Go ahead, Larry.
But in your community, university,
yeah.
College folks, the executive director and the staff at the community foundation talk with these donors on a regular basis. During the pandemic, there was tremendous problems in our community in Springfield, and the donor advised funds folks at our community foundation who had funds there, our director talked to them about neat things that were going on in the community, and all of a sudden there was millions of dollars of gifts to support the Springfield community to help feed poor people, hungry people during the pandemic. There was a need for a homeless coordinator. No bigger problem exists in the country than homelessness. And one of our donor advised funds, someone I know, donor advised funds at our community foundation as a client of our firm, they took money and they gave the money to the community to hire a coordinator to coordinate all the homeless initiatives by all kinds of different charities, including churches. And it was a big deal. So I would tell you, if you have a local community foundation, for sure, university folks, college folks, you should know those folks, because if you have a unique initiative for example, a nursing program, a new program, new scholarship opportunity, something you want to fund, you should immediately go to the community foundation, talk to those folks, tell them what's going on, because they might be a phone call away from a really big donation for you, because people care about what you're doing. There's no doubt about it. That is an established fact. So get to know your community foundation folks. Okay. Get to know
them. Yeah. One thing that is worth noting is that, you know, in a donor advised fund, the ultimate decision, the ultimate control of the funds is with the sponsor. That does cause some folks heartburn when they say, look, I really don't have the unlimited access and the unlimited means to make my charitable donations. You don't get a checkbook. You're not allowed to do that. You have to go through the sponsor, who will ultimately issue the check. But you certainly have the ability to advise on to whom the gifts should be made and how the funds should be invested. I think from a scare factor, that does exist as a worry for some. I've never really seen that as a true issue. You know, if in fact the charity that the client or the donor is seeking to contribute to is not a true public charity, that should be one that should get caught in the system and say, we can't make that gift. That's not a public charity. And in another case, that might be a reason why they would actually decline the gift would be if that act is conferring impermissible benefits on the donor. So just a couple of small worries about them, but frankly, not all that significant. The benefits of donor advised funds, we've kind of hit them already, but charitable wishes, income tax deduction up front. You know, for those folks who would donate highly appreciated securities, we're moving away from having to pay a capital gains tax. Rather than selling the asset yourself, paying the capital gains tax and contributing it, you donate it, and that capital gains is not subject to tax at the public charity level. For some of our wealthiest clients, these are things that are going to help us reduce estate taxes. And that is a small subset, but it is a subset with whom we work. The ability to be anonymous. Anonymity through a donor advised fund is sometimes a good thing. I was working with a very wealthy client who has so many people approaching him for gifting that he had a hard time saying no. So he created a donor advised fund and said everything has to go through them. Talk to the team over there, and the ability to kind of gather some a wall of defense from him having to say no if needed, and then the ability to also gift anonymously was something he really enjoyed. So that's what we'll close on the donor advised fund. One thing to point out too is that the sponsor itself is responsible for all the due diligence. So they have record keeping responsibilities, they have tax filing responsibilities, and those are things that the donor might find attractive as well, saying, look, I don't have to track those things or pay anybody to do them. So now we move to a couple of other techniques. One of them is, I think of the remaining things we'll talk about, the charitable gift annuity is probably one of the simpler ones. It's essentially a part charitable gift and a part purchase of an annuity. So how does it work? A donor takes an asset and gifts it to charity, works together to establish a charitable gift annuity. They provide it to the charity. The charity itself turns around and agrees to pay an annuity to the donor. That annuity payment has to be annual, at least. It can be more frequent. It could be quarterly, monthly, and it has to be for fixed dollars amount. So this is not one that can rise and fall. Moreover, the term of the annuity has to be for a life. So it's either the lifetime of the donor or the lifetime of a married couple. You cannot guarantee a minimum or maximum number of payments, nor can you guarantee a term of years. So if a single donor creates a significant charitable gift annuity, contributes $200,000, let's say, and expects to have a retirement income from it, but dies unexpectedly, the rest passes to charity. So that it's not a guarantee to get something back, but it is a guarantee for as long as you live, you are to get the charity. The good thing about a charitable gift annuity is that it is really quite simple. It's a 1 or 2 page document. There is no trust document. There is no trustee. There's no complicated income tax return filing for a trust, unlike the couple of the techniques that we're going to talk about next. So those are good things about a charitable gift annuity. The present value of the annuity to the donor upon creation can be no greater than 90% of the amount contributed. In other words, the charity has to get at least 10% when calculated at inception. So, and it could be that if somebody lives forever, that doesn't happen, but actuarially and calculation-wise, at inception, at least 10% has to go to charity. A couple of basic types. There's a immediate payment annuity in which the payments begin immediately versus a deferred payment annuity. Sometimes folks who have high income but worry about their high income while they're still earning, but lower income in retirement, those folks might be good candidates to have a charitable gift annuity because, one, when you establish it, you get a charitable donation at that time, so that offsets your high income. And then as you begin to earn less in retirement, then the amounts come back to you pursuant to the terms of the annuity. So a deferred annuity. And when you defer an annuity, you actually get a higher interest rate because of the time value of money that you're giving up. So something to think about. Forward. There we go. What type of donors are appropriate? Certainly the charitably minded. I think every technique here is a given that we're talking about charitably minded. Those seeking a charitable deduction today, I see a lot of these being used by elderly folks, kind of often retired folks seeking fixed incomes. They want to have a known number that hits their checking account every quarter, every year, every month, more cash flow than their current asset generates. Another thing that is a planning technique, if you see a lot of clients who are, or donors who are fully funding their retirement plans, very charitably minded individuals who have max funded their retirement could actually set up a charitable annuity with the theory that between retirement and the mandatory required beginning date of their retirement asset withdrawals, they could employ a charitable gift annuity and kind of shelter or bridge that time frame. So what are the implications to the college? There is really no negotiation, no variance in the rate that is applied. It's the rate that's set by the American Council on Gift Annuities. I read a statistic that said something like 97% of gift annuities use the rates established by the ACGA. And the rates that are established are, of course, fairly conservative to ensure that the charity actually receives a benefit. And the rates, as the slide points out, at least 50% are presumed to be passing to charity, again, actuarially computed. Factors affecting the annuity rate, there's a couple. Certainly the length of the likely annuity payments. If somebody is 50 versus somebody age 70, the annuities are certainly going to change. The Section 7520 rate. The Section 7520 rate is a technical term. It is a government rate that's issued every month, and it is the applicable federal rate. It's a rate that the government establishes. The Section 7520 rate is the rate that is at play in all of our charitable calculations. Another factor dictating what the rates are is when does the annuity begin? Is it immediate or deferred? And how often is the annuity paid? Charitable gift annuities are best in high rate environments, and we're in a high rate environment today. So the donor, upon establishing a charitable gift annuity, if this is a goal of the donor, and I think we would all admit that there's probably two objectives: one, be charitable; two, give me a cash flow. For those donors who are looking for a cash flow, the high interest rate environment is going to provide the largest annuity payment to them. And so in a market like today, they're good for donors, but colleges have to understand that if the college can't earn enough to make the required annuity payment, it risks using its own assets to make those payments because they really are a legal and a financial obligation. One thing that, there's a lot of literature about this. When talking to folks about this, you be very careful not to term them as investment vehicles or investment income. We don't want to get into a point where we're trying to market these any differently than what they are. They're an annuity, and the payments that are received are beneficiary payments. One thing that kind of just a takeaway, does the college or university or institution of higher learning have the knowledge, staffing, and structure in place to administer these in-house? Hopefully the answer is yes. A quick example about a charitable gift annuity. Let's imagine a married couple, both age 75. They want to increase their retirement income. They have $100,000 that's not providing much to them. It's cash. So they work with the college and they contribute $100,000. In today's high interest rate environment, and based on their ages, the two of them are eligible for a current annuity annually of 6.2%. So every year for as long as either of them is living, they get a $6,200 payment. Of that $6,200 payment that they receive, there is a component that will be treated as ordinary income, and there will be a tax-free return of principal. In the year 2040, in this example, actuarially, when they will have returned all of the initial investment to them, after that point, then every $6,200 payment will be ordinary income. And then importantly, when they create the trust, the two of them can take an immediate charitable deduction of $37,800. That would allow them to itemize and capture the benefit of that. In this example, it's estimated that the annuity will pay to the college approximately $90,000. And with the life expectancies of the two 75-year-olds of approximately 15, 16, 17 years, the donors are expected to receive about $100,000. So again, it's about a 50-50 split in terms of between charity and between the donor. And then just an income tax observation, in that this was a contribution of cash, the donors can offset that itemized deduction up to 60% of their adjusted gross income because it was cash. If the gift was instead appreciated property, which is going to be a bigger bang for the buck in all likelihood, then they're only able to deduct up to 30% of their AGI. And to the extent they don't use it in 1 year, you can certainly use it over the next 5 years. Just an impact, interesting observation. I gave this presentation a couple of years back, and in a low rate interest environment in 2022, today the AFR, or the 75/20 rate, is 5.8%. In 2022, the 75/20 rate was only 1.6%, so it's a drastically different environment. In 2022, the exact same fact pattern was only generating an annuity to the donors of $4,600. So high rate environment gives more money to the donors. We're moving from $4,600 a year up to $6,200 a year. The impact on the charitable deduction was negligible. They had a slightly higher charitable deduction of $40,000. All right. I'll jump next to a topic that's a little bit more complicated. It's a charitable remainder trust. And before I dive into what a charitable remainder trust is, I think it's worth, because this is a language that I've spoken for so long that I think sometimes we can assume that people understand what a trust is, and that's not the case. And I certainly didn't know when I was not a lawyer. So what's a trust? A trust is kind of a three-party transaction in which one party, the donor or the creator, transfers assets to a trustee who then has nominal ownership of the assets, and the trustee administers those assets for the benefit of the beneficiary. So it's a creator, a trustee who manages the funds and distributes them as the trust document dictates, and a beneficiary. In most cases, the common understanding of a trust a revocable living trust or a living trust. If John Lowe has a revocable trust and I create it during my lifetime, in all likelihood, I will have a trust that I'm the donor, I'm the trustee, and I'm the beneficiary. So we have alignment of interests. It's really quite interesting or quite linear. It's all for me during my lifetime and those dependent on me. If I'm not around, my trust says go to my wife, and if not my wife, our children. That's linear. In a charitable remainder trust, and I've arrived at it in a long way, but a charitable remainder trust is what's known as a split interest trust. And the split interest is the charity is the remainder and the primary beneficiary is the donor or someone that the donor appoints as the beneficiary. So for a period of time, the donor reaps benefits from the charitable remainder trust, and at the end, the charity gets the remainder. So as a split interest trust, each of the two interests has a calculable value on the date of the gift. And we use a software program here called Number Cruncher. Number Cruncher, enter the data, enter the ages of the folks, enter the applicable 75/20 rate, and the software generates what the actual charitable deduction is. So the donor, when establishing a charitable remainder trust, receives an income stream from the trust for a term of years, up to 20 years, or for life. And it can be for the lives of one or two if they're married. And the payment to the recipient must be between 5 and 50% per year. And there are very, very sophisticated options in terms of the payment structure. For this purpose, I just assume a rather straightforward, I contribute and I take back a 5% annuity interest. The named charity receives the balance of the trust assets at the end of the trust term, whether it's the lives of the donors or whether it's a 20-year period, for example. I think it's important for the donor, when establishing a charitable remainder trust, to retain the right to change the charity. And I've seen a couple of situations where either the initial named charity is no longer in existence or is not a public charity at that point, or more likely, there could have been a falling out between the donor and the initial charity. And at that point, the ability to change who the remainder beneficiary is an important power for that donor to retain. The technical tax point, to the extent you retain the ability to name a charity that is not a public charity, then your contribution deduction will be smaller. So if you retain the ability to name your private foundation, you're going to have a smaller charitable deduction up front, percentage-wise. The difference between the two main types of charitable remainder trusts, there's a charitable remainder annuity trust. That is that trust makes an annuity payment that is the same fixed dollar amount each year, regardless of the fair market value of the assets in the coming years. The donor has a guaranteed cash flow, peace of mind. In high interest rates environments, high inflation environments, that annuity payment might not feel as robust, but that's the aspect of a charitable remainder annuity trust is you have certainty. Charitable remainder unit trust is the annual payment is stated as a fixed percentage of the fair market value of the assets each year. And that does require an annual valuation calculation as to what it's worth. If it's just a portfolio of securities on the public markets, that's not all that difficult to do. But the good thing about a charitable remainder unit trust is if things rise in the trust itself, then the annuity or the unit trust payment will rise as well.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I have seen a number of charitable remainder annuity trusts run out of money. So when they're all done, I mean, they're not protecting the charity for inflation or for long life, expectancy. And they're not protecting. The donor may take out the last dollar rather than the charity. And if I'm the donor, maybe I I'm not unhappy about that, but I thought I set it up so the charity would get something. So, and the bigger charities, universities, colleges that might be represented here might have people on their team, on their staff. If we were talking about some of the big universities, they have people on staff to help set up these documents and use outside consultants. Folks in the middle or smaller schools might say, I know about this idea, but how do I implement it? Well, you're going to have to go out of house and hire an attorney or hire that's an expert. If you're in a small community, really almost no chance there's an attorney there with any experience. So you may have to reach out to somebody like us and say, who would you recommend? And we might recommend some folks who might be of service. We might run the numbers for you. But for the big schools, everything's possible. But for smaller schools, you just might not have the horsepower in house. So you got to know when to go out of house. Somebody calls me, I'll hook them up with whatever they need and find them the counsel, the documents, all that stuff. I did my thesis in charitable remainder trust many years ago for my master's in tax. So I understand how amazing this can be, but I also understand it's complicated. So
you bet, yeah. And I'll jump to the next slide. I will jump to the next slide and then I'll come back. Larry's point is a good one, is that the intent in the establishment of a charitable remainder trust is that the charity is to get at least 10%. And that's not an intent, that's a stated requirement in the tax code. So when we create a charitable remainder trust, we do go to Number Cruncher and we confirm that based on the ages of the individuals and the amount of their annuity payment each year, that we are meeting the 10% remainder to charity. Again, life experience of the beneficiary might dictate that because that person lived forever and the market went down during some of those years, that the trust could run out of funds. And that is a tragic result, but the donor, importantly, would still get the full charitable deduction despite nothing having gone to it. It's an actuarial analysis at inception. Another thing that is a requirement in the code is that at least 5%, there can be no greater than 5% chance that the trust will be exhausted. So it's a analysis up front. And I honestly remember, I've been at this for a good while now, very early in my career at a law firm, a really successful Fortune 100, maybe 500, Fortune 500 executive established a charitable remainder trust. And to Larry's point, he used an attorney in his small hometown who didn't know what he was doing and drafted a document that failed the 5% exhaustion test. And at that point, nowadays, we have the ability to reform trusts or modify trusts quite easily, even irrevocable trusts like these. In 1997, when I was working with this individual, we really were in a hot spot. We didn't know how to get out of it. And we ended up, actually, I was at a very large firm, but I ended up calling in the super big horses out of one of the charitable leads in the whole country to try to save this thing. So it's a reality that you have to meet those. Interestingly, so then I'll go back real quick. What are the consequences to the donor? You get an immediate income tax deduction. You defer capital gains tax. So if you contribute something, and in fact, my example is, a lake home here, which with basis of $150,000 and a fair market value of $500,000. That $350,000 of capital gain in this example is not immediately taxed, but each year as the charitable remainder trust makes payments to the donor has some capital gains to recognize to catch up on that inherent gain that was avoided. So charitable remainder trusts, you get an immediate income tax deduction. It certainly can work again in the context of an estate tax. The charitable component is outside the taxable estate. When is it appropriate for donors? Certainly, again, charitably minded donors who are looking to convert illiquid assets into a stream of payments, but uncomfortable parting with the entire asset. So for those of us who have clients who would give the full lake cottage without any concern, get a $500,000 charitable donation at inception. for those of our clients who say, I'd love to do that, but I would like something back because I just don't have the resources to walk away from that $500,000 house. So for those folks, a charitable remainder trust is a really good technique. High interest rates environments. So charitable remainder trusts are very strong in high interest rate environments. So we're seeing far more of these. Implications to the college, you know that at inception, you're expected to get at least 10%. It could be that you get more, it could be that you get less. But as a gift recipient, here's something just to kind of think about as a university and the impact to you. You want to make sure that there are no hiccups with this planning. And to Larry's point, if the advisors aren't good, and who's to know if they're good or bad, unless you have deep knowledge in this area, you're likely uncertain how to proceed. Do you have an obligation to read the trust document? Do you have an obligation to, in a sense, sign off on it? Do you rely on the donor or the donor's advisors? How do you know if the charitable remainder trust is flawed? I would suggest at a minimum that you do get a representation by the donor or the advisors to the donor that the trust meets all of the annual requirements or the initial requirements. And I would certainly ask for a number cruncher, proof of numbers, for example. And then importantly, too, the IRS issues, and they're not dynamite, but they're quite good. They do issue model charitable remainder trusts that do give comfort to a lot of drafters who say, look, if I use the IRS versions, then I'm going to be okay. So to get to the example, Tim and Joanna, they take their lake home, they've run out of interest in it and want to do other things. So they're going to give the charity they're going to give the cottage to the college, and they retain an annuity for, what do I have here? They retain an annuity payment of 5%. So each year, and for as long as they live, either of them lives, they get $25,000 a year. Again, the parenthetical says that they do have a little bit of capital gains to recognize. They get a $230,000 charitable deduction at inception. Helpful, certainly going to help offset income for a period of years. Assuming that the charitable remainder trust has sold the cottage and put the funds to work and earns just a modest 3%, the expectation is that the charity will still net $265,000 at the end of the trust term. Same point that I made in 2022 when I was talking about this. Charitable remainder trusts are not powerful at all in low interest rate environments. So we weren't seeing any of them in 2022. In that case, for the exact same fact pattern, they were only getting a charitable deduction of $105,000 as opposed to the $230,000 today. Next slide, just another code word. It's 368, code word 368. The last of the techniques is a charitable lead trust. And a charitable lead trust it's another split interest trust where the charity leads, so the charity gets money over a period of years, and then somebody that the donor has appointed or named as the remainder beneficiary, they get the balance of the trust after the charity's term has run. So it's an irrevocable split interest trust. It can be set up by the donor during lifetime. So it could be a lifetime charitable lead trust, or it could be in an estate plan that says, at my death, I leave assets into a charitable lead trust that benefits named charities for a period of up to 20 years, after which the remainder of the trust passes to my family. Again, I've stated the facts of it, that the charity is the lead beneficiary, either a lead annuity trust fixed amount or a charitable unit trust, rising and falling with the value of the trust account. Unlike a charitable remainder trust, there are no requirements that the charitable lead annuity be at least 5% and no more than 50% of the trust assets. So it's just a matter of what percentage you want to pass to charity each year. And then the remainder interest will revert to the donor or pass to other non-charitable beneficiaries. There are Yep, go ahead, Larry. Yep.
I can't remember exactly how many years ago, but when Warren Buffett made that big challenge to other wealthy people, he gave away. It was about the same time he was talking about his secretary being in a higher effective tax rate than he was, because she had wages and he had dividends. And he was truthful, but what he did, it appears, because I was on the other end of some of the gifts that came from Warren Buffett, that he used a charitable lead trust for that strategy. So he was able to ultimately transfer a massive amount to his kids, but along the way make massive gifts to charity. Do you agree with that?
You bet. This is a technique that the charitable lead trust is often used by some of the highest wealth folks. It's quite sophisticated. Jackie Onassis Kennedy deployed a charitable lead trust to unbelievable benefit as well. So yeah, I do see these in that context. They're complicated, but they're powerful. Charitable lead trusts are really not powerful at all in high rate environments. So this is not a time where we're seeing charitable lead trusts as opposed to charitable remainder trusts. So as rates fall and rise, each technique kind of comes in favor or falls away from favor. Charitable lead trust for a college is great. You know that you have a period of time up to 20 years where you're getting an annuity payment each of those 20 years. It's a significant awareness and a really nice thing. If the donor lives a very long time, then if they've chosen to make a charitable lead trust that's based on life expectancy instead of a term of years, you could be a big winner if the donor lives a long time. Inversely, and it's kind of dark, but there's really, I don't know if it's sophisticated or a little unseemly, but for those individuals who don't have a long life expectancy, despite the IRS table saying they have a long life expectancy, in other words, somebody who's very sick with at least a life expectancy of 1 year, you can really kind of game the system where you would say, hey, I'm going to get a 15-year deduction for the establishment of a charitable lead trust because I'm a 60-year-old individual. But in reality, I don't think I'll make my 65th birthday. So you get a really significant charitable deduction up front and the balance passes to your kids. So it's kind of a, we have seen these in that environment. So quick example, age 60, an individual creates a 5% charitable lead trust, puts $1 million at play. The AFR rate in this case would be 5.2%, and there's a reason why you don't have to, you can choose the best of 3 months that are applicable. The local university that she supports is the charitable beneficiary. So in this case, the lead trust is for 20 years. The charity will get $50,000 yearly for 20 years. The woman who establishes it gets a charitable deduction of $612,000. What is important to point out, though, is that at the establishment of this, the beneficiaries after the charity are destined to get something. And there's a calculation here that would show that they get a $387,000 amount. That amount has to be reported on a gift tax return. Whether or not that's the actual amount, that's the computation and the reporting filing requirement. And the last thing I'll point out, again, just going back 2 years, in low interest rate environments, charitable lead trusts are powerful. At that point, she was getting a donation, a contribution deduction of $850,000 versus the $612 today. So that's why we're seeing these falling out of favor. Other types of gifts, and Larry, I think we're still going to be okay with 15 minutes for you. Does that sound right?
No, we're killing it. So we're fine with me. So
okay, yeah, just a couple of points. The easy gifts are outright gifts. Certainly, Larry's going to talk about obtaining those. One of the things that I've found powerful of late has been reading revocable trust documents where there is a charity built in or a series of charities built in. I take an example here that we were working on where a woman had died and she left 3 $100,000 payments to 3 respective charities. She also left her $1 million IRA payable to her revocable trust. And her Rev Trust said, pay the charities first, and then what's left, give to my 5 kids. We devised a method by which those 3 charities were recipients of inherited IRAs of $100,000 each, thereby allowing the family to have less income recognition because that income recognition went over to the charity. So it took a little bit of work. The charities themselves were very nimble and flexible and worked with us to set up an awful lot of paperwork. Each of those charities had to establish an inherited IRA to which a trustee to trustee transfer happened for the full $100,000. But we saved an awful lot of income tax on that. And I'm seeing that an awful lot with, large retirement plan balances, and kind of trying to align with them the idea that you should put that to work for charitable purposes if you at all can. Larry, I'm going to stop sharing if you want, or should I just keep advancing the slides?
No, I'll share.
Okay, I stop share. There we go.
Bear with me 1 second. Am I sharing the correct screen? There we go. It should be now. Am I?
Yep, you just have to.
Looks
There you
good. Yep.
Softer side of charitable gifting. I am someone who's pretty technical, probably not as technical as John Lowe by any stretch of the imagination. But when I did my master's in tax back in the 90s, I learned about charitable remainder trusts. I also got involved with a bunch of groups where I learned a lot about the soft side of giving, and it effectively changed my life in that I understood better my clients. Okay. I understood a donor, possibly, if I'm involved with a charity and I'm helping a donor and talking to a donor at the community foundation. I had many discussions with potential donors about what they wanted to do, and it became a resource to them. It didn't become about me. It was about the donor. And so it's clear one of the things that we can be of service if you ever have this need for assistance related to a big gift, or a potential big gift. Now, I went to ChatGPT. I may appear to have a hallucination or a confabulation, but really, I went to ChatGPT and said, why do people give to charities? And I get the following, and I think these are important reasons to understand, but in no particular order. The largest gift that I was ever associated with helping a donor make had nothing to do with altruism or compassion. But for a lot of people we know, it's a big, the donors, your donors at your college or university, that's a big deal. Social responsibility. Some people get to the point in their life when they have a tremendous, and I'm going to give some books that I think that are worth reading, whether you're in the finance area, the president of a college, university, or in the fundraising area. Social responsibility, personal connection. I mean, y'all work for a college or university. Poll everyone you know who went to a college or university. There's an extraordinary, or should be an extraordinary, personal connection. I graduated in 1981. I still have an incredible personal connection to ISU, where I graduated, to Fontbonne. I got my master's back in the 90s. I have a personal connection there. I mean, these are some of the best times of our life. Tax benefits are important, but that is not the biggest reason people make big gifts to charity. Guaranteed. Religious or ethical benefits, you go to a golf outing and you get dinner and some drinks and maybe some prizes. We reduce the value of your contribution by those items. If you go to church at the temple or the synagogue or the mosque or wherever you worship, intangible religious benefits do not reduce the value of your contribution, thankfully. Gratitude, a lot of people I know who make big contributions relative to their wealth, gratitude is a big part of it. I mean, they know they are grateful. They have reason to be grateful. They want to give empowerment and hope to people. I mean, there's so many stories out there. If I had more time, I would tell you, it's really, if you're on the donation side, it's all about the stories. And if you have a donor to your college or university, the stories are what matters. I mean, they're not randomly given to your college or university. They're giving because they care deeply about the college university, okay? I was at a conference years ago, and I met two people. One of them was Dr. Paul Shervish, Boston College Social Welfare Research Institute. Back in the 90s, he wrote the Millionaires in the Millennium, the great study of wealth transfer. Community Foundation study, at university study. We all know there's going to be a great wealth transfer over the next 10 or 15 years. People are going to pass away and leave large amounts of money. Some of it to their kids, some of it to their friends, some of it to the charities they care deeply about. And I learned from Dr. Shervish, and I've got one word that's not bolded, but it should be bolded. In the context of charitable giving, and all Shervish did at Boston College was talk to wealthy people. He studied wealthy people. He met with wealthy people. He asked them questions. Shervish's work suggests that individuals often give because they care about the well-being of others and want to make a positive impact on society. And this care may manifest in all kinds of forms: financial donations, volunteerism, advocacy, community engagement. But we need to understand what people care about. If you're talking to a donor, if you're sitting down with a donor, ask them questions about what they care about. I came back from a Paul Shervish, a day with Paul Shervish, our morning with Paul Shervish. And I came back from Cincinnati, talked about this definition of care. Kind of changed my life because I understood better why people do what they do. And I got back in the office about 3:45 from Cincinnati. We'd been there a couple days. We started in 2 days before painting a food bank. So we did conference philanthropy. Then we heard from all these amazing people. We heard from Charlie Collier, who was from Harvard. He was the development director at Harvard at the time. He said he just spent an hour with a bunch of Harvard alumni, never said the word Harvard. Why? Because he didn't need to say Harvard. They all cared deeply about Harvard. They all went to Harvard. They have ties that run very deep. I come back from that event. I'm talking to a lady. She walks in with a tax notice. And as an accountant, it like drains the energy in the room when somebody walks in with a tax notice. But I love this lady. So she walks in. She goes, "Where you been? I've been out of town. What have you been doing? Come back. We'll talk about it." We talked about her tax notice for about 45 seconds. Okay. And then we went, she goes, "What'd you learn?" And I told her about Dr. Shervish, and I told her about, I need to do a better job of understanding what my clients care about. And she goes, "Ask me, what do you care about?" She goes, "I care deeply about my college." This is a good topic for today. I care deeply about my college. I said, "What have you done?" She goes, "I haven't done enough. My mom and dad have endowed scholarships there." And we talked about it. She cried. And then she said, "I'm going to tomorrow call the university and give $100,000 to my university." Now, she had money. She didn't have extraordinary money. But we talked about what she cared about. She goes, I know what I need to do. I need to endow a scholarship just like my mom and dad did while they're alive." And she did. And it was cool. And she was happy. And I didn't tell her to do it. We just talked about what she cared about for like 15 minutes. This is really important stuff. And so some books worth reading, okay? Some books that I think are worth reading. Whether you're actually on the front arm of raising money, the front end, or along for the ride, it's part of your job. You may meet with donors, and I think this first book is really incredible. It's called Give to Live: How Giving Can Change Your Life. At the beginning of this book, I mean, they talk about in this book, and it's a very cool book. It's written by Douglas Lawson. It's probably hard. You can find it used. Okay, talks about the psychology and emotional benefits of giving. All kinds of cool stories. Talks at the first about a University of Chicago study. University of Chicago, they saved my wife's life. It's a wonderful place. Okay, their hospital saved my wife. They did studies. People who give more live longer. So if I was given a gift to a donor, a longtime donor, I'd give them this book. It talks about, and it may make them go, I should do more. If they want to. We're not making them give, but we're helping them give if they want to give. Another amazing book is by Bob Buford, and it's called Halftime. And it maybe has a little bit of a faith-based approach to it. But in this book, but it really doesn't. And I've given this to clients who want to be donors, who are donors. And the whole tagline of the book is about moving from success to significance. He's at the middle point in his life, whatever that is. And he says, I still want to make a bunch of dough. I still want to make a lot of money. I still want to run my business, but I want to be more significant. And that's what I learned through the Community Foundation. I found ways to be more significant. So transitioning to significance, discovering calling, investing in others. That's what you learn about in this book. I love this book. Don't Just Give It Away by Renetta Rafferty. Paul Newman wrote for it. It's just not a new book, but it's a book worth reading, because if you're the kind of charity that people should give money to, you're going to check the boxes here. Okay, you're going to do all the right things that makes donors happy. Okay, you're going to be the type of charity that people should give money to. So this is kind of one of those things where maybe the donor reads this book and they ask better questions. They come to your charity and go, wow, this is the kind of charity that I should be giving money to, because you're responsive and you're making a difference. Okay. The last book, and we're just about the end, and this is another person who kind of changed my life. His name was Bill Sturdivant, University of Illinois Foundation. Bill is a really, really good person. And Bill was the kind of person that worked with big donors, and big donors gave big money to him. Now, he always, one of his code words was, and this book by him, The Artful Journey, is worth reading. It's not a new book, but it's a great book. And Paul Shervish talks about, and people make annual gifts. Somebody that makes a $25 gift or a $50 gift or a $100 gift or a $500 gift annually or periodically or regularly, we need, and if you can go into your Intel and run a report of people that have given the last 25 years, I don't care how much money they've given. They've given you $25 a year. You should put them on a list. I was with Larry Stelter. He runs Stelter. They produce materials for charities to send out to donors. Amazing materials. If you've never seen them, stelter.com. But Larry Stelter talked about the same thing that Bill Sturdivant talked about. It's about moving people. And those people that may give you $25, $50, $100 a year, week, or month for a long time, they are prime candidates to leave everything they have to you after they've taken care of their friends and family. So Shervish passed away a few years ago. He was an amazing guy. He was a wonderful human being. He always talked about stop and think. You make people get in their checkbook, write a $500 check. Maybe that's what they do. They don't have to consult with their significant other. And then the gifts that could change the future of your educational institution are those stop and think gifts. And that's what people like Shervish wanted to move people from making regular, periodic, annual contributions into the lifetime gift. And you, just because you don't think somebody doesn't have a lot of money at university, college, you just never know who has all the money, okay? Who has big money. So these are great books. Give to Live is an amazing book. None of these books are new. None of these books are probably highly rated today, but every one of those books is worth reading. So it's 12.
You got to hit the next slide, Larry, because of the code word.
Oh, right. Code word. That's it. 778. I'd like to thank our team who reacted today and made this work with starting with a world-class platform that didn't work, moving on to another world-class platform that did work, but the members of our team, they rolled with the flow. So anybody got any questions? Great presentations. Try to use hallucination or confabulation in a sentence today if possible. Remember, if you don't know what it means, go to ChatGPT. So,
or ask ChatGPT to use it for you, right?
Yes, I'd rather try first than if I can't do it. So, great presentation, sir.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
everyone.
man.
Well, thank you, John, Larry, and Ray, again, for the informative presentations today. Before leaving for the day, please make sure to get the final key code or code word into conferences.io. You'll also be receiving a survey via email that Rachel has noted in the chat box as well there. Please do take the time to fill out that survey for us. It is what we use your feedback and your input to shape our future offerings and future sessions on that. So please, again, do take the time to do that. Tomorrow, we're going to be back on the go-to go-to platform. Appears that they have resolved all of their operational issues that plagued them this morning. So we are planning to be back on the go-to platform tomorrow. We'll be covering our international reporting topic as well as our GASB and uniform guidance update. So again, thank you so much for taking some time out today and look forward to hopefully seeing you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.